At my brother Eric's funeral, my sister-in-law Janet appeared with a nasty smile and started talking about inheritance. As his wife, I've hit the jackpot with this inheritance. My father, with a stern expression, questioned Janet.
Don't you know?
What? Janet, unaware of the truth, was about to face a rude awakening. My name is Annie, and this year I turned 60. Since graduating from college, I worked as a sales clerk in a general company, recently retiring to enjoy a leisurely and carefree retirement. I met my husband when he joined the sales department at 32 through a mid-career hiring program, and I was assigned to train him. We quickly became close. He was always positive and unafraid of failure, which attracted me, someone who's a bit more prone to feeling down. My approach worked, and we smoothly transitioned from dating to marriage, welcoming our son Clifford the following year. I thought our happy family would last forever, but it all came crashing down. When Clifford was there, my husband died in a car accident. Struggling to accept his death, I hardly ate. My brother Eric and father Alan were deeply concerned. Especially Eric, a busy hospital worker, made time every weekend to cook for us and take us out. My brother worked at a university hospital and was so busy that he hardly had time for us, but he always made time for our family. Having lost my mother and husband early with few relatives, I relied heavily on my brother and father. They were indispensable to my son and me. Influenced by my brother, my son is now a surgical intern at a nearby clinic, aspiring to become a practitioner. His dedication and work ethic remind me of my brother in his younger days. My son, who respected my brother for his strict yet educational guidance, was able to become a doctor thanks to his influence.
I want to be a doctor like Eric,
my son confessed when he was just a high school freshman.
It's not an easy path,
Eric would say, his words stern but his smile soft.
I wonder if I'll ever get to work in the same hospital as him.
My brother Eric mumbled. Out of earshot of my son, seeing this, I felt a warmth in my heart. And with Eric's full support, my son managed to get his medical license and become a surgeon like Eric. Eric, who had been single for a long time, got married last year to Janet through an arranged marriage. I was genuinely happy for him, yet a part of me felt a little lonely. I thought Eric's marriage would mean less time with my son and me, but he continued to visit and often went out for drinks with my son. However, I felt something off about Janet's behavior. Eric always came alone and Janet rarely joined him. What's up with Janet today? I asked.
She's at her parents' house today,
he replied with a troubled smile. On the rare occasions when we did see Janet, she was always engrossed in her phone, never joining in our conversations. One day, I invited her to lunch. How about lunch tomorrow? There's this place with great desserts featured on TV. I can't tomorrow, she replied curtly. I persisted. How about the day after or any other day that suits you? Her response was, I see. Why do I have to? We're not really family, so there's no need to be close, right? When Janet coldly spoke to me, I realized, yeah, you're right. Sorry. No matter how much I wanted to be close to Janet, I was just her sister-in-law. Reflecting on this, I decided to keep my distance. I had wanted to be close, given our small family circle, but being about 10 years older than Janet, I didn't want to be seen as a nagging sister-in-law, so I accepted her stance. Then Eric called one day.
I'll be drinking with Clifford today, so he'll probably stay over.
Isn't Janet there? I asked, worried about intruding on the newlyweds, but Eric reassured me it was fine. The next day, my son returned visibly upset.
I think Janet is just after Eric's money. She told me Eric's money is mine, and you won't get a cent.
Janet said that? I asked.
Yeah. And as soon as she found out I'm a doctor too, she changed her attitude and started flattering me. I think I'll stay away for a while. You should warn Eric too, Mom.
My son advised me before heading to his room. Janet's behavior, coupled with my son's words, weighed heavily on my mind. After that incident, I didn't see Janet again, and whenever I asked Eric about his marriage, he just said not to worry because they were doing fine. I wondered why Eric married Janet in the first place. Sure, she looked great, but her personality bothered me. Despite my concerns, I thought it wasn't my place as a sister to comment on his marriage. That was until I saw Janet unexpectedly while shopping. She was walking arm in arm with a frivolous-looking man of her age, looking quite intimate. My suspicions turned into certainty. Angrily, I deliberately appeared in front of them. Janet, what are you doing, and who might this gentleman be? I confronted. She looked shocked for a moment, but then, without any sign of remorse, started talking to the man. I don't know this old lady. Let's go, she said, pulling the man into a luxury brand shop. Just wait a minute. Janet was betraying Eric? Unforgivable. I was torn, but decided to tell Eric about the incident. He sounded less cheerful than usual when he answered the phone. Eric, are you okay? You seem down. I thought about mentioning Janet, but decided against it.
It's okay. How's Clifford doing? Is work going well?
Yes, you just met Eric the other day, didn't you? He seems to be busy every day.
That's right.
As I hesitated to broach the main topic, my brother suddenly said,
Next time, I have something to give to Annie and Dad. Could you both come?
Yes, that's fine. After I replied, he hung up the phone. I wondered if he was feeling unwell. Despite being a doctor attentive to others' health, he often neglected his own, a trait he passed to my son. Eric and my son would laugh about this being an occupational hazard, but they should consider the worries of those who care about them. Ideally, Janet should be supporting Eric, but I couldn't count on that. A few days later, Eric informed me of his day off, and Dad and I planned to visit his house. However, that visit never happened because Eric collapsed at work. Panicked, I called my son and we rushed to the hospital, but Janet was nowhere to be seen. Where is Janet? I asked. We tried calling her multiple times, but there's no response, came the reply. I tried contacting Janet several times, but to no avail. Thinking she might not answer an unknown number, I called from Eric's phone. What? I told you not to contact me today, Janet answered harshly. Surprised by her tone, I responded, hello? It's Annie. Upon realizing it was me, Janet's attitude changed. Oh, Annie. It's been a while. Janet was, as usual, unchanging. I was surprised by her transformation, but was more concerned with informing her about my brother's situation at work and his unconscious state. Is that so? I have other commitments today, so I can't come. However, Janet seemed indifferent to my brother's condition. I couldn't believe she didn't seem concerned about her husband being unconscious. Your husband is unconscious. Aren't you worried? We need you at the hospital immediately. But Janet, unyielding, replied, I said, I can. I'll come when I have time. Don't tell me what to do. And with that, she hung up, not answering further calls. It turned out Eric had terminal cancer. With no effective treatment left, only pain management. Why didn't you tell us sooner? I asked him.
I didn't want to worry you.
When my brother woke up in the hospital, he quietly accepted his illness. It turns out he had been diagnosed with cancer a little while ago and had been undergoing treatment since then. I wished he had told us sooner. When I conveyed this, he shared something with my father and me. Are you sure about this?
Annie, I'm counting on you. Leave the rest to us, and you rest. Thank you, Dad.
3 months later, Eric passed away quietly in his hospital room, watched over by my father, my son, and me. I informed Janet about his health. Eric just passed away, I said. Her response was nonchalant. Okay, got it. Stunned by her indifference, I was further taken aback when she added, I'm busy, so I can't handle the funeral arrangements. Please take care of it, Annie. Without waiting for a response, thanks, I'm counting on you. She unilaterally ended the call. At the funeral, everyone, including my son and Eric's colleagues, were visibly displeased with Janet's behavior. Despite my role as a representative of the family, I couldn't help but cry, overwhelmed by memories of my brother, who had always been there for me and my son. He was no longer with us. Besides us, my son was crying with sobs, while my father stood there with a grim face. My son admired and respected my brother as if he were his real father. Amidst the church, enveloped in sorrow, Janet made an out-of-place appearance. She was dressed in flashy branded clothes unsuitable for the church, accompanied by a blonde man who looked frivolous. When I met her before, she was dressed demurely and seemed calm, so I hardly recognized her at first. This must be her true self, a facade created to suit my brother's preferences until now. Her sudden arrival caused a stir. What are you doing here now after never visiting him? I couldn't help but confront her in a low voice. Thanks for the funeral. You're no longer needed. You can go home now. Janet, usually sullen, greeted me with a full smile. What do you mean, no longer needed? Do you realize what you're saying? I was shaking with anger. What are you talking about? Of course I do. Eric's entire inheritance belongs to me, his only family, she said, laughing nastily. Usually, even though we are married, he's a workaholic and doesn't take me anywhere for travel. Well, the best thing about being his wife is getting the inheritance to play around with for life. Hearing this, I felt an uncontrollable rage. I thought such a woman should go to hell and glared at Janet. Then a woman approached me. Are you okay, Annie? It was Miss Bailey, the head nurse at the hospital where my brother worked. Miss Bailey had been a great help even before my brother's death and supported us in funeral preparations, a reliable ally. Thank you, Janet. It's my first time meeting you. Miss Bailey greeted Janet sarcastically, prompting laughter from the surrounding nurses. Dr. Eric left no inheritance, did he? His family would know, right? Miss Bailey challenged, to which Janet responded in annoyance. What are you saying? That's impossible. Eric was a doctor. He must have had savings and they all belong to me. Her claim was met with more laughter from the nurses.
Didn't you know?
My father, with a stern face, questioned Janet. Well, it's no surprise you don't know, given you never even visited him. What are you talking about and laughing at a funeral? How inappropriate. Janet raised her voice, ignoring her own issue. The property is mine. Leave now. She was going insane, not understanding why everyone was laughing. You are not inheriting anything, I informed her coldly while she was in denial. Firstly, there is no inheritance left by Eric. That's a lie, she exclaimed, but I knew this was the beginning of Janet's reckoning for exploiting Eric and her greed for money. Eric was doing end-of-life planning. End-of-life planning? Yes, he decided to give his money to those who cared for him beforehand, so there should be nothing left in his bank account. If you think it's a lie, you can check. Janet, visibly shaken, insisted on her rights to his assets. Even if there is no money, there is the house and land. I'm entitled to a portion. I couldn't hold back my tears, thinking how my dear brother was deceived by someone like her. You claim rights even though you never visited him during his hospitalization? Tears welled up in my eyes, thinking how my dear brother was deceived by such a person. I couldn't let Janet have her way. With that thought, I continued to speak. The house you lived in was built by my husband before we got married. After he passed away, my son and I moved back to our family home, so we lent it to Eric. Therefore, the house is now in my son's name. If Eric is gone, we will take back the house and land. I had heard the whole truth from my brother that day. He knew about Janet's infidelity and had a faint suspicion that she married him for his wealth. And I had been entrusted with a special request from my brother. Eric's last wish was to give his assets to our family and donate to the hospital, ensuring his money benefited those who supported him. The nurses who had laughed earlier chimed in. Dr. Eric was always kind, even donating to the hospital. We had a great time at the party he funded. Another revelation followed. Eric was in the process of suing you through a lawyer for compensation, I told Janet. Compensation? She trembled at the mention of compensation. Yes, Eric had already handed over evidence of your infidelity gathered by a detective agency to his lawyer. You won't receive a cent of Eric's money. But already? Janet probably wanted to say that my brother was already gone, but reality isn't so kind. I have taken over Eric's claim for compensation. Just because Eric passed away doesn't mean the claim disappears. You'll have to take full responsibility. Hearing this, Janet turned pale and begged me, Please forgive me. I truly loved Eric. I was sickened by her convenient lies. You never visited him once while he was hospitalized, yet you claim to have loved him? Janet was speechless at my retort. Also, the cost of the brand items you bought with Eric's money are included in the claim for compensation. You talked about your legal share, and I wonder if there will be anything left for you to receive. Please, I can't pay that kind of money, Janet pleaded. Then ask the man next to you to pay, I suggested, looking at the man who quickly distanced himself from Janet.
I thought I would get money by being with her. I don't want to be involved in this mess.
He left promptly, abandoning Janet, who collapsed to the ground, deserted even by her lover. Janet was left alone with no one to help her and eventually left the venue by herself. Later, I heard from the lawyer that Janet struggled with a compensation claim and debt repayment. She had to sell her prize brand items and was now juggling cashier jobs at a supermarket and part-time at a grocery store to pay off her debts. She couldn't continue living in the house, which was now in my son's name, and was residing alone in an old apartment she managed to rent. Meanwhile, our family continued to live a modest life. The inheritance from Eric is set aside for my son's future clinic. We thought using it then would make Eric happiest. My son seemed even more passionate about his work, motivated by Eric's legacy. With a focus on staying healthy to support my son, I carry on with my days.